Disclaimer.
Jesus stood at my wedding, and he was grieving.
My name is Rebecca Morrison. I am 42 years old. I died for 7 minutes on March 12, 2019 in Melbourne, Australia.
I was sitting at the kitchen table that morning. Before I begin, please subscribe so more people can hear testimonies like this. Autumn light filtered through the curtains, soft and golden, the kind of light that should have made everything feel warm. But I felt cold. I had felt cold for years. My husband sat across from me, newspaper open, coffee steaming beside his hand. He had not looked at me once. Not when I sat down. Not when I poured my tea. Not when I cleared my throat, preparing to say something, anything, that might crack the silence between us. I opened my mouth. The words were right there, sitting on my tongue like stones. But I swallowed them. Again. I had been swallowing words for 14 years. Swallowing dreams. Swallowing hurt. Swallowing the woman I used to be until I could barely remember her face. He turned the page of the paper. The sound was loud in the quiet. Sharp. Final. I looked down at my hands, folded in my lap like a child waiting to be dismissed. My wedding ring caught the light. Gold. Heavy. It had felt like a promise once. Now it felt like a shackle. I did not know when it had started, this slow erasure of myself. It had not been sudden. It had been 1,000 small moments. 1,000 times I bit my tongue. 1,000 times I made myself smaller so he could feel bigger. 14 years. It felt like 40. 3 months earlier, something had happened. Something I could not ignore. I had been at church, standing in the back during worship, when Pastor Helen, a visiting speaker from another congregation, had walked up to me during the altar call. She did not know me. We had never spoken. But she took my hands and looked into my eyes and said words that felt like they had been pulled straight from the throne room of God. You have been called to lead, to speak, to shepherd women who are lost and afraid. But you have been silenced. And heaven is grieving over what you have buried. I felt something break open inside me that day. Something I had locked away so tightly I thought it was gone. But it was not gone. It was just buried. Alive. Aching. Waiting. I went home that night with fire in my chest. Hope. Vision. The kind of clarity I had not felt since I was young. I could see it so clearly. The ministry, the women gathering, the freedom in their eyes as they encountered God without shame. I could feel it humming beneath my skin like electricity. I told him. That night, after dinner, I sat beside him on the couch and I told him what Pastor Helen had said. I told him about the calling, the vision, the way God had been stirring something in me for months, maybe years. I told him I wanted to start a small group. Just a few women. Just a Bible study. Nothing big. Nothing threatening. He did not look at me while I spoke. When I finished, he set down his phone. Slowly. Deliberately. He turned his head, and his eyes were flat. Cold. You are not ready for that kind of responsibility, Rebecca. My throat closed. You have never led anything before, he continued, his voice calm, controlled. You do not have the maturity. You get emotional. You take things personally. Leading requires strength. Discipline. You do not have that. I tried to speak. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I am not saying this to hurt you, he said, and his tone was gentle now, the kind of gentleness that felt like pity. I am saying this because I love you. Because I do not want to see you fail and embarrass yourself. Or embarrass me. I nodded. I do not know why I nodded. But I did. And that night, I went into the bedroom and I cried into my pillow so he would not hear. And the fire I had felt, that wild, holy fire, it flickered. Dimmed. And I told myself he was right. He must be right. He was the head of the house. He heard from God. I was just emotional. But I could not let it go. I started writing. Late at night, after he had gone to bed, I would pull out a notebook I kept hidden under the mattress. I wrote sermons, messages, prayers, scriptures that burned in my chest. I wrote what I would say if I ever got the chance. If I was ever brave enough. I did not tell him. I became very good at hiding. Hiding my thoughts. Hiding my gifts. Hiding the parts of me that made him uncomfortable. It became a habit, a reflex, like flinching before the blow even lands. I learned what tone to use when I disagreed with him in public, the soft, laughing tone that made it sound like I was joking, not challenging. I learned how to dress for church events, modest, but not too modest. Attractive, but not distracting. Visible, but never the center of attention. I learned to shrink. And the smaller I became, the more space he took up. At dinner parties, he would tell stories and I would nod along, even when he got the details wrong. Even when he made me the punchline. I would laugh. Everyone would laugh. And I would feel something inside me die just a little bit more. Our friends thought we were solid. Strong. A model Christian marriage. They did not see the silence in the car ride home. They did not see the way he corrected me behind closed doors. The way he sighed when I cried. The way he looked at me sometimes. Like I was a disappointment he was too kind to mention out loud. I carried so much weight. The weight of pretending. The weight of performing. The weight of a grief no one ever let me speak about. 2 years before that morning at the kitchen table, I had lost a baby. 12 weeks along. I had been so excited. Terrified, but excited. I had already started buying things. Little clothes. A blanket. I had painted the second bedroom pale yellow. When I miscarried, he held me for a moment. Just a moment. Then he said, it was not meant to be. God has a plan. And that was it. He never spoke of it again. When I tried to bring it up weeks later, he said, Rebecca, you need to move on. Dwelling on it is not healthy. So I buried it. I buried the baby. I buried the grief. I buried the anger I felt toward God for taking something I wanted so badly. The yellow room became a storage space. Boxes. Old furniture. Things we did not need but could not throw away. I walked past that door every day. And every day, it felt like walking past a grave. I was so tired. Tired of carrying weight no one acknowledged. Tired of pretending I was fine. Tired of being the woman everyone needed me to be while the woman I actually was suffocated in silence. But I stayed. Because leaving would make me a failure. Because the church taught me that the covenant was forever, no matter what. Because I was more afraid of being alone than I was of disappearing entirely. So I sat at that kitchen table. And I swallowed my words. And I told myself this was faithfulness. 3 months after Pastor Helen spoke that word over me, I did something I had never done before. I lied. I told him I was going to the shops. That I needed to pick up groceries. That I would be back in an hour. And then I drove to a coffee shop in Fitzroy and met with Pastor Helen. My hands were shaking when I walked in. I felt like a teenager sneaking out. Guilty. Terrified. But also awake. For the first time in years, I felt awake. She was already seated near the window, 2 cups of tea on the table. She smiled when she saw me, the kind of smile that sees straight through you. Kind, but knowing. Rebecca, she said softly. I am so glad you came. I sat down, gripping my bag in my lap like it could anchor me. My throat felt tight. I did not know where to start. I did not even know why I had come, really. Maybe I just needed someone to see me. To see the part of me I had been hiding. How have you been? She asked. I opened my mouth to say fine. To say good. To say all the things I always said. But instead, I started crying. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears that fell without permission, and once they started, I could not stop them. I do not know what is wrong with me, I whispered. There is nothing wrong with you, she said, reaching across the table to hold my hand. You are just exhausted from pretending there is. I looked up at her, blinking through the tears. Tell me, she said. Tell me what you have been carrying. So I did. I told her about the calling I felt. The messages I wrote in secret. The way my husband had dismissed it. The way I had convinced myself he was right. I told her about the miscarriage. The silence. The slow disappearing of my voice. The way I had learned to make myself small enough to fit into the space he allowed me. I told her things I had never said out loud. And when I finished, I felt hollow. Scraped out. But also lighter. She did not say anything for a long moment. She just held my hand and let the weight of it settle between us. Then she leaned forward and asked a question that cracked something open inside me. Rebecca, does he celebrate who God made you to be? I stared at her. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to defend him. But I could not. Because the answer was no. He did not celebrate me. He tolerated me. He managed me. He corrected me. He loved the version of me that stayed quiet, stayed small, stayed out of the way. But the real me? The one God had made? He had never even met her. I think you already know what you need to do, Pastor Helen said gently. But you are waiting for permission. So I am going to give it to you. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to use your voice. You are allowed to walk away from anything that asks you to bury the gifts God gave you. I shook my head, panic rising in my chest. I cannot leave, I said. I made a vow. Covenant is forever. That is what we are taught. That is what I believe. Covenant is sacred, she said. But it is not meant to kill you, Rebecca. And if staying is killing the person God created you to be, then maybe the most faithful thing you can do is leave. I could not breathe. Her words felt too big, too dangerous, too true. I left the coffee shop that afternoon with my head spinning. Hope and terror tangled together so tightly I could not tell them apart. I drove home in a daze, gripping the steering wheel, replaying her words over and over. Does he celebrate who God made you to be? No. No, he did not. And I had spent 14 years pretending that did not matter. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as it always did. Neat. Quiet. Perfect from the outside. But I felt different. Something had shifted. I walked through the front door, keys jingling in my hand, and froze. He was standing in the living room, waiting, arms crossed, jaw tight. My stomach dropped. Where were you? He asked. His voice was calm. Too calm. I told you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I went to the shops. No, he said. You did not. He took a step forward, and I saw it then, clutched in his hand. My notebook. The one I kept hidden under the bed. The one with all my sermons. My prayers. My dreams. My breath caught. I found this, he said, holding it up. While I was looking for something you said you had put away. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. You have been lying to me, he said, his voice still controlled, still measured. You went behind my back. After I told you that you were not ready. After I told you this was not God's will for you. It is God's will, I said, and my voice cracked. I know it is. I feel it. I have always felt it. You feel a lot of things, Rebecca, he said, and there was something cruel in his tone now. That does not make them true. You are being emotional. Rebellious. This is not submission. This is pride. It is not pride, I said, louder now, something breaking loose inside me. It is my calling. It is my voice. It is the thing God put inside me before I ever met you. And you think you know better than me? He snapped, his calm finally cracking. You think you hear from God more clearly than I do? I think you have spent 14 years telling me I do not, I shot back, and I felt the tremor in my hands, the heat rising in my chest. I think you have spent 14 years making me smaller so you could feel bigger. His face went red. How dare you, he said, his voice low and dangerous now. After everything I have done for you. After all the grace I have shown you. After putting up with your emotions, your sensitivity, your constant need for validation. I do not need validation, I said, and tears were streaming down my face now, hot and furious. I need to be seen. I need to be heard. I need to stop dying inside this marriage. The words hung in the air between us. I had said it. The thing I had been too afraid to say for years. I had finally said it. His face twisted. Shock. Hurt. Rage. You are being manipulated, he said. By that woman. That pastor. She is filling your head with lies. With rebellion. You need to stop seeing her. You need to stop this before you destroy everything we have built. What have we built? I asked, my voice breaking. What do we actually have? A marriage where I am not allowed to be myself? Where I have to hide who I am to keep you comfortable? You are out of line, he said. No, I said, shaking my head, something wild and desperate rising up in me. I am finally telling the truth. And then it happened. A sudden, blinding pressure inside my skull. Like something had burst. like lightning had struck the inside of my head. I gasped, stumbling backward, my hand flying to my temple. The room tilted. His face blurred. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My legs gave way beneath me, and I felt myself falling, the floor rushing up to meet me. I heard him shout my name, but it sounded distant, muffled, like I was underwater. The pain was unbearable. And then, it was not. The pain stopped. Everything stopped. The sound of his voice, the heat of my anger, the weight of my body, all of it fading, fading. My last thought, before the darkness swallowed me whole, was this: I should have left. And then, nothing. Just the sound of his voice screaming my name, getting further and further and further away. I was not falling anymore. I was floating. No, not floating. Suspended. Held. Like invisible hands had caught me mid-collapse and were cradling me in something softer than air. The pain was gone. The blinding pressure in my skull, gone. The weight in my chest, gone. The sound of his voice screaming my name, fading, until there was only silence. Not the silence of an empty room. The silence of everything. Complete. Total. A silence so deep it felt alive, like it was breathing around me. I tried to move my hand. I could not feel it. I tried to take a breath. Nothing. No inhale. No exhale. No rise and fall of my chest. I should have been terrified, but I was not. I felt calm, eerily calm, like I had been holding my breath for 14 years and had finally let it go. And then I realized I was dead. The thought did not come with panic. It came with clarity. Cold. Simple. Undeniable. I opened my eyes. Light. Golden, warm, pouring over me like honey. Not harsh. Not blinding. Just present. Everywhere. I could not tell where it was coming from because it was not coming from anywhere. It just was. I blinked, trying to adjust, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. And that is when I saw it. My wedding ring. Suspended in the air. Right in front of me. Hovering. Glowing. But it was wrong. The gold was tarnished. Scratched. Cracked down the center like something had tried to split it in two. The light inside it flickered. Weak. Struggling. Like a candle about to go out. I stared at it. I knew that ring. I had worn it every day for 14 years. I had twisted it around my finger during arguments. I had looked at it in the mirror and told myself it meant something. That it was sacred. That it was proof I had done the right thing. But now, here, in this place, it looked like what it had always been. A symbol of something broken. I reached for it. My hand. I could see my hand now, pale, trembling, not quite solid. I stretched my fingers toward the ring, some instinct pulling me to touch it, to hold it, to claim it. But the moment my fingers got close, it drifted backward. Away from me. Like it did not want to be touched. I tried again. It moved again. Further. I dropped my hand, chest tightening with something I could not name. Rejection. Loss. Confusion. Where was I? I looked around, finally pulling my gaze away from the ring. I was standing. At least. I thought I was standing. I could not feel the ground beneath me, but I was upright. Stable. And in front of me, stretching out like something from a dream, was a corridor. Long, narrow. Lined with frames. Photographs. My breath, if I still had breath, caught in my throat. I knew those photographs. I took a step forward. Then another. My legs moved without effort, like walking through water, weightless and slow. The first frame I reached was large, ornate, glowing with soft light. My engagement. I was younger. 28. Smiling so wide my cheeks must have hurt. He was beside me, arm around my waist, looking at the camera with that confident grin everyone loved. We were standing on the beach at sunset. The sky behind us painted in pinks and oranges. I looked so happy, so alive. I touched the edge of the frame, and the memory rushed into me like a wave. I could feel the sand under my feet, the salt in the air, the way my heart had pounded when he got down on one knee. The way I had said yes before he even finished asking. The way I had thought, this is it. This is the life I have been waiting for. I pulled my hand back, breathless. The next frame was our wedding day. I moved closer, almost afraid to look. There I was. White dress. Flowers in my hand. Hair curled perfectly. Makeup flawless. I was walking down the aisle, bouquet trembling in my grip, eyes locked on him. He stood at the altar, hands clasped, looking so sure. So steady. And I had thought he was my rock. But then I saw something else. Something I had not noticed before. In the background of the photo. Behind the rows of guests. Behind the flowers and the candles and the smiling faces. Someone was standing there. I leaned closer, squinting, my heart beginning to race. It was Jesus. He was standing at the back of the church, partially hidden by a column and his face. His face was not smiling. He looked sad. No, not sad. Grieving. I stumbled back from the frame, shaking my head. No, that could not be right. Everyone had said it was blessed. Everyone had celebrated. The pastor had prayed over us. My family had wept with joy. It was a Christian wedding. A covenant. A holy union. Why would he be sad? I forced myself to move to the next frame. A dinner party. 2 years into our marriage. I was sitting beside him at a table full of friends, laughing at something someone had said. But when I looked closer, really looked, my eyes were wrong. Hollow. The smile was there, but it did not reach my eyes. The next frame. 5 years in. A church service. I was standing beside him in the front row, hands raised in worship. But my face looked tired. Worn. Like I was going through the motions. The next frame. 8 years in. A holiday photo. The two of us standing in front of the Sydney Opera House. His arm around my shoulder. My body angled slightly away from him. I did not remember that. But now, looking at it, I could see it clearly. I had been pulling away even then. Frame after frame. Memory after memory. And in every single one, the light grew dimmer. My smile grew smaller. My body grew stiffer. And he was there. In every single one. Jesus. Standing in the background. Watching. Reaching. Closer and closer with each passing year. In the early photos, he was distant. Watching from afar. But in the later ones, he was right beside me. His hand on my shoulder. His face close to mine, whispering something I could not hear. But I had never seen him. I had been too busy looking at my husband. Too busy trying to make him happy. Trying to keep the peace. Trying to be enough. I had not noticed that Jesus had been right there the entire time, trying to get my attention. I stopped in front of the most recent photograph. It was from 3 weeks ago. A Sunday morning. We were standing outside the church after service, talking to another couple. I was smiling, nodding, performing. But Jesus was standing directly behind me, his hand outstretched, reaching for mine. And I had not turned around. My knees buckled. I sank to the ground, or whatever this was, and covered my face with my hands. I did not know, I whispered. I did not know. But even as I said it, I knew it was not true. I had known. Deep down, in the quiet places I refused to listen to, I had known. I had felt his pull, his whisper, his gentle tug toward the door. But I had been too afraid. Afraid of what people would think. Afraid of being labeled a failure. Afraid of admitting I had made a mistake. So I had stayed. And I had called it faithfulness. The hallway began to shift around me, the frames dissolving into mist, and suddenly I was somewhere else. A garden. I stood slowly, turning in a circle, my heart pounding. I knew this garden. I had planted it. Years ago. When I was young. Before I got married. I had a little courtyard garden behind my flat, and I had filled it with roses. Lavender. Native grevillea and kangaroo paw. Flowers that made me feel alive. But this garden was dying. The roses were brown, petals curling inward, stems cracked and brittle. The lavender was shriveled. The grevillea were choked, barely hanging on. I walked forward, my feet moving soundlessly over the dry ground, and I knelt beside a rosebush. I touched one of the flowers, and it crumbled to dust in my hand. No, I whispered. I looked closer. Vines. Thick, dark vines wrapped around every stem, strangling the life out of them. I tried to pull one away, but it would not budge. It was rooted deep, woven so tightly into the plant that I could not tell where one ended and the other began. And then I saw the words, written on the vines, burned into them like brands. Silence. Fear. Duty. Do not be difficult. Submit. Be quiet. Do not make him uncomfortable. You are too emotional. You are too much. I staggered back, ball rising in my throat. These were the words that had killed me. Not the aneurysm. These. The words I had swallowed. The words I had believed. The words I had wrapped around my own throat until I could not breathe. This garden was me. Everything I had buried. Everything I had silenced. Everything I had killed to keep him happy. And now it was all withered. Dead. Choked by the lies I had believed were truth. I sank to the ground, my hands covering my face, sobs tearing out of me without sound. I did this, I whispered. I let this happen. And then I heard it. A soft voice. Small. Clear. You were supposed to write the book. I froze. The voice was not loud. It was gentle. Quiet. But it cut through the silence like a blade. I lifted my head, tears still streaming down my face, and looked toward the far edge of the garden. There, beneath a tree I had not noticed before. A child. Small. Glowing softly. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, hands cupped together, holding something that pulsed with light. My heart stopped. I knew. Without being told. Without needing to ask. I knew who that child was. No, I breathed. But my legs were already moving. Stumbling. Trembling. Carrying me toward the tree, toward the child, toward the truth I had buried 2 years ago and never let myself grieve. The baby I lost. The one I was never allowed to talk about. The one he said was not meant to be. I collapsed to my knees in front of the child, my hands shaking, my chest heaving with sobs I could not control. The child looked up at me. Not with accusation. Not with anger. Just peace. Calm. Steady. Knowing. Why are you here? I whispered, my voice breaking. The child smiled. Soft. Sad. I have been waiting, the child said. Waiting for what? For you to remember. I shook my head, confused, drowning in grief. Remember what? The child uncupped their hands and held them out to me. In their palms was a book. Small. Glowing. Bound in soft leather. My name was written on the cover in gold letters. Rebecca and Morrison. I stared at it, my breath catching. What is that? The book you were supposed to write, the child said. I reached for it with trembling hands, and the moment my fingers touched it, I knew. I knew exactly what it was. The book I had dreamed of writing. The one about mothers who grieve in silence. The one about miscarriage and loss, and the violence of being told to move on before you have even been allowed to mourn. I had felt it stirring in me after I lost the baby. A calling. A burning. A message that needed to be written. But I had buried it. Because he said it was too personal. Too raw. Too much. Because he said no one wanted to read about death. About sadness. About pain. Because he said I needed to move on. So I did. I shoved it down. I locked it away. I told myself it was not important. And the calling died with it. I opened the book, hands shaking. The pages were blank. Every single one. Empty. I do not understand, I whispered. The child's voice was soft. Not condemning. Just truthful. You buried me. And then you buried your voice. The words hit me like a fist to the chest. I doubled over, gasping, the book clutched to my chest. I did not know how, I sobbed. I did not know how to carry both. The grief and the calling. I did not know how to survive losing you and still have something left to give. You were not supposed to survive it alone, the child said. He was supposed to carry it with you. But he would not. So you carried it by yourself. And it broke you. I looked up, tears blurring my vision. I am so sorry, I whispered. I am so sorry. The child reached out and touched my face. Their hand was warm. Real. You do not have to apologize to me, they said. But you do have to stop apologizing for being alive. I closed my eyes, the weight of those words pressing into me like stones. And then the child was gone. I opened my eyes, gasping, and they had vanished. The book was still in my hands, but the child was no longer there. Just the tree. The dying garden. The suffocating silence. And then I saw them. Papers. Drifting down from the sky like leaves. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Falling slowly, spinning in the air, landing softly on the ground around me. I caught one. My handwriting. Wedding vows. I, Rebecca, take you to be my husband. To have and to hold. To honor and to cherish. But the word cherish was burned away. Gone. Erased. I caught another. In sickness and in health. Health was ash. Another. For better or for worse. Only worse remained. I stood slowly, turning in a circle, watching the papers fall around me like snow. Every vow I had made. Every promise I had kept. But they were not whole. They had been rewritten. Edited. Destroyed. Not by me. By him. By the years of silence. Of control. Of slow erosion. I had kept my vows. But he had not kept his. And I had spent 14 years pretending that did not matter. The papers stopped falling. The garden went still. And I felt it. A presence behind me. Warm. Steady. Unmistakable. I turned slowly, my heart in my throat. Jesus. He was standing there. Not far. Not distant. Right there. Close enough to touch. His face was not angry. It was heartbroken. I tried to speak, but no words came. He stepped closer, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle. Firm. Undeniable. You thought enduring pain made you faithful. I opened my mouth to respond, but he continued, his eyes holding mine. But I never asked you to become smaller to make him comfortable. Tears streamed down my face. I was trying to honor my vows, I whispered. And what about the vows I made over you? He asked softly. Before you ever met him. Before you ever said yes. I called you. I anointed you. I gave you a voice to lead my daughters. His words cut deep. And you buried it, he said, and there was no condemnation in his tone. Just sorrow. You buried it to keep a man who was never supposed to stay. I thought I was being faithful, I sobbed. You were being afraid, he said. Not cruelly. Just honestly. He reached out and took my hand. His touch was warm. Real. Solid. Some doors I close with love, he said, his voice unwavering. You kept this one open out of fear. He turned slightly and gestured. A door appeared. In the garden wall. Where there had been nothing before. It was open. Glowing. Light pouring through it, warm and inviting, calling me forward. But I could not move. I looked down. Golden threads were wrapped around my wrist. Around my ring finger. Tangled. Knotted. Stretching back toward the hallway, back toward the dying garden, back toward the life I had been living. I had not noticed them before. But now I saw them clearly. And I realized. They were not chains someone else had put on me. They were threads I had wrapped around myself. Out of fear. Out of shame. Out of a belief that leaving would make me a failure in the eyes of everyone I loved. I do not know how to let go, I whispered. Jesus knelt beside me. He looked at the threads. Then at me. And he said the words I had been running from my entire life. You were never trapped, Rebecca. He reached out and touched the threads. They began to glow. Loosen. You were just afraid of the key I gave you. I looked at him, tears streaming, my whole body trembling. What if I am wrong? I whispered. What if leaving is a sin? What if I am just being selfish? His eyes held oceans of mercy. Selfish is staying in a place that kills you and calling it holy, he said. I did not die so you could spend your life disappearing. I died so you could live. Fully. Freely. As the woman I created you to be. The threads fell away. All of them. At once. And for the first time in 14 years, I felt light. The door ahead of me glowed brighter. Jesus stood, offering me his hand. It is time, he said. I looked back at the garden. The hallway. the shattered ring still hovering in the distance. Everything I had clung to, everything I had sacrificed myself for. And I realized I did not want it anymore. I took his hand, and I walked toward the door. But just before I reached it, he stopped. He turned to face me, his expression serious. "If I send you back," he said, "you have to choose. You cannot live halfway anymore. You cannot silence your voice to keep the peace. You cannot bury your calling to avoid conflict." "I know," I whispered. "Do you?" he asked, searching my face. "Because it will cost you. People will not understand. They will judge you. They will call you rebellious. They will say you gave up." I swallowed hard. "But I will be free," I said. He smiled. Soft. Proud. "Yes," he said. "You will." And then everything went white. If you are still here, thank you. Please subscribe if you want more testimonies like this. The white light exploded. And then I was being dragged backward, violently, like a rope had been tied around my chest and someone was yanking me through concrete. Air slammed into my lungs. Burning. Choking. I could not breathe. I could not think. I could not see. My chest felt like it was being crushed. Ribs cracking. Pressure so intense I thought my body would split open. Voices. Shouting. Overlapping. Chaotic. "She's back. We've got a pulse. Keep going. Keep the compression steady. Rebecca. Rebecca, can you hear me?" Hands everywhere. On my chest. My wrist. My face. Pressing. Pulling. Holding me down. I tried to move, but my body would not obey. It was like I had been shoved back into a cage that no longer fit. Light stabbed through my eyelids. Bright. Blinding. White and sterile and wrong. The beeping. Oh God, the beeping. A heart monitor screaming in my ear, erratic and frantic and alive. I gasped, choking on oxygen, my throat raw like I had been screaming for hours. My body convulsed. Jerking. Spasming. Drowning in air. "Easy, easy. You're okay. You're back. You're safe." Safe. I was not safe. I was trapped. Trapped back in this body. This life. This world I had just been set free from. Tears poured down my face before I even knew I was crying. I could still see it. The garden. The door. His face. Jesus. Standing there. Holding my hand. Telling me I was never trapped. But now I was back. And the weight of it. The unbearable, suffocating weight of it. Crushed down on me like a boulder on my chest. Rebecca. His voice. My husband. I forced my eyes open, blinking against the fluorescent lights, the blurred shapes slowly coming into focus. The hospital room. White walls. Machines. Wires attached to my arms. And him. Standing at the foot of the bed. Face pale. Eyes red and swollen. He looked like he had aged 10 years. "Thank God," he breathed, stepping closer. "Thank God you're back." He reached for my hand. I pulled it away. The movement was instinctive. Immediate. I did not even think about it. His hand hovered in the air, frozen, confusion flickering across his face. "Rebecca," he said softly. I could not look at him. I turned my head to the side, staring at the wall, my chest heaving, my throat too tight to speak. A doctor appeared beside me, shining a light in my eyes, asking questions I could barely hear. "Do you know where you are?" I nodded. "Do you know what happened?" I nodded again. "You suffered a ruptured brain aneurysm," he said, his voice calm, clinical. "You were clinically dead for 7 minutes. We were able to revive you, but it was nothing short of a miracle. 7 minutes. It had felt like a lifetime." He kept talking. Something about tests. Monitoring. Recovery. But I was not listening. I was still in the garden. Still seeing the cracked ring. The withered roses. The blank pages of the book I never wrote. Still hearing his voice. "You were just afraid of the key I gave you." My husband tried to step closer again. Can I pray for you?" he asked, his voice trembling. I closed my eyes. I could feel him hovering. Waiting. Expecting me to say yes. To reach for him. To let him take control again like I always had. But I did not. I kept my eyes closed. My hand pressed against my chest. My head turned away. A nurse noticed. "Sir," she said gently, "maybe it is best if you give her some space. She has been through a lot. Let her rest." He hesitated. I could feel his frustration, his confusion. But eventually, he left. The door clicked shut. And I broke. Sobs tore out of me, raw and guttural, my whole body shaking. The nurse came to my side, placing a hand on my shoulder. "It is okay," she said softly. "You are okay." But I was not okay. I had seen the truth. And now I had to live with it. 3 days passed in the hospital. 3 days of tests. Scans. Doctors poking and prodding and marveling at the fact that I was alive. He came every day, brought flowers, sat beside the bed, tried to hold my hand. I let him once, just to see if I could. But the moment his fingers closed around mine, I felt it. The threads. The invisible threads wrapping around my wrist, pulling tight, dragging me back toward the cage. I pulled my hand away. He did not understand. "Rebecca, talk to me," he said on the 3rd day, frustration finally breaking through his careful tone. "You have barely said a word since you woke up. What is going on?" I stared at the window. Melbourne at dusk. The skyline glowing. Lights flickering on one by one. "I died," I said quietly. "I know," he said. "But you're here now. You are alive. We can move forward. We can." I saw things, I interrupted, my voice stronger now. He went still. "What kind of things?" I turned to look at him. Really look at him. And for the first time in 14 years, I saw him clearly. Not the man I had married. Not the man I had convinced myself he was. But the man he actually was. "I saw our marriage," I said. His jaw tightened. "Rebecca, you had a brain injury. You were oxygen deprived. Whatever you think you saw. It was real," I said, my voice unwavering. "It was more real than anything I have ever experienced." He stood, pacing, running his hand through his hair. "You are not thinking clearly. You need time to recover. To process. You cannot make decisions based on some hallucination." It was not a hallucination. He turned to face me, his expression hardening. "Then what was it?" I took a breath. It was God showing me the truth. Silence. Heavy. Thick. He stared at me like I had lost my mind. Maybe I had. Or maybe I had finally found it. That evening, after he left, I sat by the window alone. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of the monitor and the hum of the hospital at night. I pressed my hand against the glass, cool and smooth, and I remembered the door. The glowing door in the garden. The one I had walked toward with Jesus. The one I had been too afraid to walk through my entire life. I closed my eyes and prayed. Not the prayers I used to pray. Not the desperate, pleading prayers asking God to fix my marriage. To change my husband. To make me strong enough to endure. This time, I prayed something different. "God, give me the strength to do what you showed me. Even if no one understands. Even if everyone turns away. Give me the courage to walk through the door." Peace. Immediate. Overwhelming. Undeniable. It washed over me like warm water, and I knew. I knew he had heard me. I knew he was with me. I knew I was not alone. A nurse came in a few minutes later. An older woman with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a bun. She checked my vitals, adjusted my and then paused, looking at me with a softness that made my throat tighten. "You know," she said quietly, "I have been a nurse for 30 years. I have seen a lot of people come back from the edge. And the ones who survive, they always come back different." I looked up at her. "Different how?" She smiled. "Like they have seen something. Something that changes them forever. Like they cannot go back to living the old way, even if they wanted to." Tears filled my eyes. "You are right," I whispered. She squeezed my hand gently, then left the room without another word. And I sat there in the dim light, staring out at the glowing city, and I made the decision. I was not going back. Not to the marriage. Not to the silence. Not to the version of myself I had buried to keep the peace. I was done. And for the first time in 14 years, I felt free. They released me from the hospital 1 week after the aneurysm. My husband picked me up, drove me home, carried my bag inside, fussed over me like I was fragile, breakable. And maybe I was. But not in the way he thought. I was not fragile because of the aneurysm. I was fragile because I was holding a truth I knew would shatter everything. That evening, I sat him down. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses in on you, heavy and suffocating. He sat on the couch, hands folded, looking at me with concern. With confusion. With something that almost looked like fear. "I need to tell you what happened when I died," I said. He frowned. "Rebecca, you already told me. You had some kind of experience. A vision. But the doctor said." "I do not care what the doctor said," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "I know what I saw. And I need you to hear me." He leaned back, crossing his arms. Guarded. Already defensive. I took a breath and told him. The garden. The hallway. The photographs. The withered flowers. The vines labeled with words like silence and fear and duty. I told him about the unborn child. About the book I was supposed to write. About the vows floating in the air with half the words burned away. I told him about Jesus. About the door. About the threads I had wrapped around my own wrists out of fear. And I told him the truth I could no longer deny. I cannot stay in this marriage. The words hung in the air between us. Silence. Long, terrible. Heavy. His face shifted. Confusion. Shock. Anger. "You cannot be serious." "I am." He stood, pacing, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. "Rebecca, you just had a traumatic brain injury. You are not thinking clearly. You are confused. You need time to heal. You need—" "I have never been more clear," I said, and my voice did not waver. He stopped. Turned to face me. "This is insane. You are going to throw away 14 years of marriage because of some hallucination? Some dream?" "It was not a dream," I said. "It was the clearest thing I have ever experienced." "Then you are being deceived," he snapped. "The enemy is using your trauma to twist your mind. To destroy our covenant." I shook my head. "No. I was being deceived before. For 14 years. And I finally see it." "See what?" he demanded. I looked at him. Really looked at him. "I see that you never celebrated who God made me to be. You tolerated me. You managed me. You controlled me. Every time I tried to step into my calling, you shut me down. Every time I expressed my emotions, you made me feel like I was too much. Every time I had a thought that did not align with yours, you dismissed it." His jaw clenched. "I was protecting you. Leading you. That is what a husband is supposed to do." "No," I said, tears streaming now. "A husband is supposed to love his wife the way Christ loved the church. And Christ did not silence the church. He did not make the church smaller. He did not bury the church's gifts to keep himself comfortable." He stared at me, his face red, his hands shaking. "So that is it," he said, his voice cold now. "You are just going to leave? Break covenant? Abandon everything we built?" "What did we build?" I asked, my voice breaking. "A marriage where I was not allowed to be myself? Where I had to hide my calling? Where I apologized for existing?" "You are twisting everything," he said. "No," I said. "I am finally telling the truth." He stepped closer, his voice dropping, his eyes hard. "If you leave, you are breaking covenant. And God will judge you for it." I stood, meeting his gaze, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "God already told me to go. I am finally listening." He stared at me. And then he turned and walked out. Slammed the bedroom door. Left me standing there in the silence. And I did not chase him. For the first time in 14 years, I did not apologize. I did not try to fix it. I did not shrink myself to make him feel better. I just stood there. And I felt free. 3 weeks later, I moved out. I stayed with a friend from church. A woman who had quietly supported me for years, who had seen the cracks long before I admitted they were there. The whispers started immediately. Church friends stopped calling. Small group members unfriended me on social media. Women I had served alongside for years crossed the street when they saw me. I was labeled rebellious, deceived, a covenant breaker. Some people asked for my side of the story. Most did not. They had already decided. And it hurt. God, it hurt. But I kept moving forward. I started seeing a Christian counselor who specialized in spiritual abuse and codependency. In our sessions, I began to untangle the lies I had believed. That submission meant silence. That suffering proved faithfulness. That leaving made me a failure. She helped me see the patterns, the control, the manipulation disguised as spiritual leadership. She helped me grieve the years I had lost. And she helped me find my voice again. I started writing. Late at night, sitting at the kitchen table of my friend's apartment, I wrote the book I had seen in the garden. The one the unborn child had handed me. The one with blank pages. I wrote about the miscarriage. About the silence. About the grief no one let me carry. I wrote about the calling I had buried. About the marriage that suffocated me. About the moment I died and finally saw the truth. The words poured out of me like a dam breaking. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. 6 months after my NDE, Pastor Helen invited me to speak at a small women's gathering. 30 women. A living room. Cups of tea and nervous energy. I was terrified. But I stood up. And I told my story. I told them about the garden. The vows. The door. The threads. I told them about the marriage that looked blessed, but felt like death. And I told them what Jesus said to me. You were never trapped. You were just afraid of the key I gave you. When I finished, the room was silent. And then one woman started crying. Then another. And another. They came to me afterward. Hugging me. Thanking me. Telling me their own stories. I thought I was the only one woman whispered. I have been afraid to leave for 10 years, another said. You just gave me permission to be honest, a third told me, tears streaming down her face. I realized something in that moment. My story was not just mine. It belonged to every woman who had been told to stay silent, to stay small, to sacrifice herself on the altar of a broken marriage and call it holy. The invitations started coming. Small churches, women's groups, conferences. I said yes to every single one. And every time I shared my testimony, women came forward. With tears. With questions. With stories that mirrored my own. One woman told me her husband controlled every dollar she spent. Another said hers monitored her phone and isolated her from friends. Another confessed she had lost herself so completely she did not even recognize her own face in the mirror anymore. They were me. And I was them. And together, we began to heal. I started a blog, then a podcast. Messages flooded in from women all over Australia, then New Zealand, then the UK, then the United States. Women who had been told that leaving was sin, that enduring abuse was faithfulness, that their pain did not matter as long as the marriage stayed intact. I told them the truth no one else would. That God does not require you to destroy yourself to prove you love Him. That covenant is sacred, but it is not meant to kill you. That sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is walk away. 1 year after my NDE, I stood on a stage in front of 200 women. A women's conference in Sydney. Lights. Cameras. A sea of faces looking up at me. My hands were shaking as I gripped the microphone. But my voice was steady. I told them my story. And when I finished, I said the words that had been burned into my heart in that garden. God will never ask you to destroy yourself to prove you love Him. And neither will a marriage He is truly blessed. The room erupted. Standing ovation. Tears. Women rushing forward. One woman grabbed my hands, sobbing. You just saved my life, she said. I held her. And I wept with her. Because I knew. This was why I came back. This was the voice I was meant to use. This was the destiny my marriage had been blocking. Thank you for listening. Subscribe and watch the next testimony on your screen. If you are in a marriage that is suffocating your calling, silencing your voice, or asking you to become someone God never intended you to be, hear me. You are not rebellious for wanting to be free. You are not selfish for using your voice. You are not a failure for walking away from something that is killing you. God gave you a life. And He did not give it to you so you could spend it disappearing. He gave it to you so you could live. Fully. Freely. Boldly. As the woman He created you to be. If my story resonates with you, leave a comment below. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next testimony. Because your story matters. Your voice matters. And your freedom is not rebellion. It is obedience.